Okay, let's talk about how you get sober and the process that happens. Process is really, really important. For those of you who don't know, I read a book a couple of years ago. There it is. I'd suggest getting it. In it, I talk about the 5 pillars of sobriety, and the 5 pillars are movement, connection, balance, process, and growth. And the book explains what all of those are and how to work them and all that kind of stuff. But I want to explain about process because it's one of the most important concepts to understand. And as a therapist, therapists are all about process. So you are in a process right now. Processes, like, they have beginnings, middles, and completions. And then another process starts. Like, you never stop being in a process. So you might be in the thinking about stopping drinking process, or the stopping drinking process, or the long-term sobriety process, but you'll be in other processes. You might be, in the raising little kids process, or empty nester process, retiring process. Like, there's just lots of processes, right? And in those processes, remember, they have like beginnings and middles, and then they complete. There's an enormous amount of growth and learning that comes as we go through these processes. So getting sober is a process, and I want to explain how it works. And this is based on like 22 years experience. I used to work in a rehab. I've started and ran a rehab, and I've done like thousands of clinical hours as a psychotherapist, worked with lots of different people. So this is how I want you to visualize the process of getting sober. It's just like, this is a seesaw, right? This is a seesaw. One end is drinking and one end is sobriety, right? And it's about what you put your weight on. So you have to consistently put your weight on the sober end. Up until now, you've been putting your weight on the drinking end, right? If you think about everything that's involved with drinking, right? The planning, there's a whole culture around drinking, right? I have a friend who's like 39 years sober, and he was really into what was it, like in England it's called like Camera. It's like the campaign for real ale, right? There's a whole thing about real ale, and they'd have like meetings and stickers, and right, there's a whole culture around wine tasting. There's a whole culture around tequila, right? There's not just the drinking, there's like a lot of paraphernalia around it, right? That is all putting weight on the drinking end. We want to put weight on the sober end. If you consistently put weight on the sober end, eventually it will keep going and it will embed itself in the earth. This doesn't work like just like boom, like it will just like swing back, actually. That, like how seesaw does that, will just go boosh. So it's like consistently just putting this weight on. So this embeds itself in the earth. And I'll talk about how to do that. Now, the most important word here is consistently. Your alcohol habit has been consistent. There is a consistent pattern to it. However you drink, and whoever's watching this, people drink in all kinds of different ways, right? You might be a solo drinker, someone who drinks at home, no one around. You might be only drink out in bars or clubs or whatever. You might be a secret drinker. You might be a binge drinker. But there's a consistency to it, right? And it will start with a thought. Like, when does that thought start? Is it this day of drinking, or a few days earlier, or even weeks earlier, right? And there's a whole, like, you know how to do it. It's a consistent, established pattern from the first square to the end square, which is you being drunk and drinking too much. So consistent, we've been consistent in our drinking. We need to be consistent in our sobriety. Sometimes I trip over my tongue. So that's really important. Now, a great book to read, by the way, is Atomic Habits by James Clear, because he talks about how when we try and change, when we make changes, the mistake we make is intensity over consistency. And I love that book because it's completely aligned with what I teach about getting sober. Same thing, intensity over consistency and getting sober will not work. Like, intensity is like doing all the things like January, buying all the books and all the podcasts and all the things and and then we just burn out. It just gets exhausting. What we want to do is small, consistent, sustainable changes over time. That is how you're going to get sober. Now, I'll talk about some of the things that you need to do. So that is why I wrote this book, because the 5 pillars, if you practice the 5 pillars consistently, that's the way on the sober end. And there's lots of things that you need to do. Number 1, movement, exercise, prioritize moving your body. There's just so many reasons for this, but I want to tell you one of the most important reasons. It's good for your health. It's really good for your mental health. And if you are in early sobriety, it actually heals your brain. Exercise, alcohol has damaged your brain. Like, it causes damage to your brain. And it mostly causes damage to how serotonin and dopamine function. And your brain's going to need some time for it to heal, so it can create the chemicals that you need in your brain to feel okay. So exercise helps heal that. Exercise just checks many, many boxes in terms of helping our mental and emotional health. Now, we need to do more than exercise. I've seen lots of people rely only on exercise as the thing to maintain their mental health. And that's dangerous. And the reason for that is there will be a time that you won't be able to exercise due to sickness or injury or life circumstances, right? So exercise is great, do it, but don't over rely on it. So move your body. The next thing is connection. You need to have connection with people who understand what you're going through. So you need to connect with people who know what it's like to be, struggling with an alcohol problem or trying to get sober or all of that kind of stuff. By the way, if you want to get started on this, check the link below. Little ad, check the link below. It's a program. It will help you. I just think don't make this harder than it needs to be. Connecting with people who are going through the same thing or a bit further ahead will help enormously. Balance. Work on where you are out of balance. Work on balancing your needs. Like, where are you working too much or not getting enough sleep or not enough time with your kids, or like, where are you out of balance? Process. Now, this is the pillar of process and growth. Actually, I want to talk about that. I believe, and this is what I do, and this is what I teach my clients to do, what we need to develop is a self-reflection practice. And a self-reflection practice is where we begin to know ourselves better and understand why we feel the way we do, why we behave the way we do, why we keep having the same results, all of that kind of stuff. And I do that in what I call structured journaling. Structured journaling is I write out my resentments, my limiting beliefs, my fears, and I write 10 things that I'm grateful for. And I have done that consistently, not daily, but consistently for 22 years. And it has transformed my life, because my problem is my thinking. My thinking just gets a bit crazy. It can do. It can, like, the world is not always as we perceive it to be, right? And I have to sometimes just get myself like, hang on, what's really going on here? Like, why am I having these like strong feelings? Why did I have that reaction? Structured journaling enables me to do that. And that is a consistent practice. So what you need is to develop a practice that maintains your mental and emotional health for the rest of your life. And that is how we get sober and how we stay sober, because we've been using alcohol to manage our mental health and our emotions and all of that kind of stuff. So we need to shift from putting the effort and energy here to putting the effort and energy here consistently, self-reflecting, knowing ourselves better, taking action, moving our bodies, connecting with people, balancing all of that, so that eventually this will embed itself in the earth. And that is how we get and stay sober long term, because all of that leads to emotional sobriety. And that's what this whole channel is about. It's 10% not drinking alcohol and 90% emotional sobriety. And this work we do consistently, that is what allows us to be emotionally sober. Check out the program, the links below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a video. Take care.